and cultivation of donors. They just happen to be to benefit events. So I think that you can really, if you can focus on building individual relationships and kind of getting down, like your pitch, and like we were talking about what you do for the young professionals, it's really how you're going to sell what the cause is, get people passionate and behind what you're doing as a development person. But I think that events is a great stepping stone for going into development as being a development officer, because you have to have the relationships first. I mean, I think any local large nonprofit, they're not hiring a development officer that doesn't have contacts existing already.
We have these two huge fundraising galas in the spring, and so those each have volunteer event committees, and those are usually made up of donors. These people kind of double as volunteers, but also donors. So I build relationships with them, kind of helping them to ask businesses to donate to our auctions. So through that, I've made relationships with these event committees, and I think you kind of leverage that relationship to increase their giving to your organization. So if you like those events, if you like the social thing, I'm definitely not a 9-to-5 person. I usually work at least one night a week at a volunteer meeting or an event of some kind. So that has been, if you like events like that, it's definitely fun. If you like socializing with people and building those relationships, yeah, I would say focus on building the relationships, and then you can get into that, because you might be their strongest connection to the organization as the manager of the event committee or whatnot.
Field-wise, I think that people are pretty supportive and are willing to mentor you, and I think if you go to your boss, or if you go to a development officer and say, hey, I'm really interested in this, would you be willing to sit down with me and talk about it? Or go to your boss and say, hey, I'm kind of interested in these things, do you think that we can explore my job responsibilities to see if that kind of goes up? And I think, worst case scenario, they say no, which I would mostly be surprised if they did. But, I mean, if that's the situation, then I think that there are also places that you can go to volunteer time. So if I ever wanted, as a prospect researcher, to go into development, and I couldn't really do that at Harvard, I feel like I could come to Northeastern and say, hey, I have development experience doing this, but I'd be happy to volunteer a certain amount of time to doing, maybe not frontline, but something more closely related to it. I think that you would find that people were pretty open and willing. I actually think they're pretty different personalities. I think that people who are frontline, they enjoy dealing with people, especially people who are passionate. But at least for Harvard, where the gifts are going to be a larger amount, and like there are some asks that take years in the making, and it will be a 5-year process, sometimes a 10-year process, so that they'll donate $200 million. Like to go for that ask, there's a certain amount of adrenaline, and I think that attracts people like that. And for me, it's much more, it's much more analytical, and if you're excited about Googling something and finding some obscure thing on the internet, that's the type of person who does prospect research.
It's through the College of Professional Studies. It's a Master's of Science in Nonprofit Management, so it sort of mixes some classes that are considered nonprofit management classes, which are basically business classes, but they're specific to nonprofits. So they're like financial management for nonprofits, marketing and public relations for nonprofits, governance, legal governance, and board management. And then there's some other classes that are required in leadership and in communications, and you kind of mix them all together. And
grant writing classes?
There is a grant writing class, there's a fundraising and development class,